I was hoping that we could finish this discussion, Jason, by looking at more general tips about sight reading. So this is really a big, area. So this really could be anything that comes to mind. And I just was thinking about advice that I've received that has benefited me, over the years and helped me in terms of developing my reading skills. One thing that I think can be useful to people is, if we're at this earlier stage of developing your playing, is to be thinking about separating out notes and rhythm, exactly like the way that you presented the course. And there's so many resources. You can find apps, random rhythm generators online that you can find. We probably used to read from rhythm books. There's a book, a jazz book called, what is it? It's a Sight Reading in 4/4 Time by Louis Bellson. A lot of jazz bass players use this famously, and they'll just play an open string and practice playing the rhythm. It's a drum rudiments book, but it could be any written rhythm. But the point is you're separating it off in your mind, and then you're really getting clear about the way that the beats are divided up, and the different variations. You practice those different rhythms. And then you can add in pitch. And as a jazz bass player, one of the things that helped me get comfortable with pitch was to focus on walking bass lines. And I actually think you could bow these as well. I think it'd be just, if not more, valuable. But the great thing about playing written walking bass lines, specifically notated lines, is that you are eliminating essentially rhythm, because pretty much you're going to be playing in a 2-feel or a 4-feel. So I found that really beneficial. I could spend my time working on the rhythms, then I could look at written, so you can get maybe the Aebersold books, these fantastic Ron Carter bass lines or whatever classics, play through them, and then eventually you're going to be putting it all together in, with more elaborate music. I mean, certainly, funk bass or whatever would give you a good workout with those 16th notes. And so, yeah, that was a couple of things I was thinking about in terms of getting started. What were some of the areas that you feel that people should be focusing on maybe when they at the beginning?
Well, it is just so hard for people to be okay with moving on when they're not sure they're on the right note, and focusing on rhythm, just like you're saying. That's key. The great bass player from the Cleveland Orchestra, Scott Haig, I remember him telling me about his audition for the Cleveland Orchestra. They put some insane sight reading excerpt up for him, and he said, I just kept that bow moving. I didn't know what notes I was playing, kept that bow moving, and he got in. And the advice I heard from a teacher years ago is, if you play all the right notes at all the wrong times, it's a disaster. If you play all the wrong notes at all the right times, you just sound modern. And I thought that's very good advice, but it's very challenging, I've found, for people, whatever their level are, but certainly starting out, to move on from the wrong note and just to understand. But when I've trained myself over the years to, it almost doesn't matter what note I play, even if I play some on-pitch sound, to get that rhythm and to continue going. So I think putting on a metronome and practicing different pieces, a sight reading generator is great. We have apps for that now, where just pull out a bit of unfamiliar music and just practice and practice, keep going and making that shape, kind of understanding how to make a gesture and fill in the notes later. I think it's a skill, it comes with time, but people early on, they become so focused on exactly getting the right note, kind of being okay with having it be a little bit cloudy in terms of pitch, but being able to really get the rhythm and really kind of get the overall shape of the phrase or the notes, rather than, oh no, I can't get these first 2 notes, and then they get stuck and then the rest of the group has gone on. When you're playing in a group, that train is moving, and if you don't jump on and stay on, you're going to be 18 bars behind before you know it.
To land strong on the kind of key beats, that are playing, and understand that sometimes it is more of a musical gesture and the specifics in the middle, but the rhythm is at the forefront of what you're doing. Did you practice things like bowing exercises? Like, I'm thinking about the Sevcik book, that which is a violin bowing method, I believe, which has been adapted to the bass. Mine was the book I had was by Neil Tarleton, I believe. I don't know if you have.
That's a great book.
Yeah. And he also has a set scales one, I think, which is quite good as well, I remember. But did you find bowing exercises? Because then you're working on the physicality of it, but you're also practicing 16th note rhythms, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, that's so super helpful. I found Sevcik helpful. I love those Tarleton books. And then the Carl Flesch, which is a scale system that's been used, violin, viola, cello, and also bass. The more I got into that and practicing different scales and arpeggios, and it's really just scales and arpeggios, the more vocabulary I had, because that it's all scales and arpeggios. and even if it's an unfamiliar pattern, it's really not if you've practiced your scales and arpeggios. I've worked in several situations. We had a lot of people come in and sight read, and the people that were successful, and the advice that we gave is like just there are a certain series of steps you can go through before you sight read that will set you up for success, and it's just a little checklist to go through. Number one, or certainly near the top, time signature. How often people just go off the rails because they didn't notice it was 6/8 or 5/4 if it's something more advanced. Key signature. Just look at that key signature. First note. If we have 4 sharps, is it E or is it C sharp? Or perhaps something else, but probably one of those. That informs whether it's minor or major. Then what we would call roadmap. Look through. Are there repeats hidden in there? Are there decapos or DSs or first endings or second endings or something like that? Anything with the form. And then look for red flags. So all of a sudden, a bunch of 16th notes, probably look at that for a second. And I found that when people are sight reading, that if you could just go through that checklist, you're going to be much more likely to produce something coherent.
I think that's really good advice, to be able to draw on, to sort of get calm, center yourself. And roadmap, wow, it's so important. If we're playing in an ensemble, the mistake that people are most likely to make is that they will get lost in the form somewhere. And if you have the opportunity to open the score just to see what you're going to be expecting in terms of DSs, DCs, where the coda is, and often we're working in imperfect circumstances. Perhaps the bit of the page is a bit worn out there, and you might want to have a pencil with you, which actually I think is another really key bit of advice for people sight reading, is to notate the parts in pencil and highlight areas that maybe the coda sign isn't particularly well written, or maybe the repeat marks are missing because whoever wrote it missed them from that section. It will really help you to try to, when you're practicing sight reading, try to practice continuing on in the event that you make a mistake as well, because when you're playing in an ensemble, you're not going to stop everybody because you missed a repeat mark. You're going to have to pick yourself up. A couple of other quick things before I throw it back to you is that I was thinking about, in terms of playing in an ensemble, trying to read ahead. I don't know about you. I can remember a period where I was trying to just look slightly in advance of the note that I was playing. So if I'm, that's one thing. The other thing that came to mind was also trying to think about your sight lines if you're playing with other musicians, that that you don't have the music stand over there, and whether the leader or the conductor or the ensemble partner, try and keep them roughly so you don't have to make large movements. I think pencil, looking ahead if you can be useful in the practice room and help you develop that. And then I was thinking about sight lines. Have you got any thoughts on those, or any other tips that maybe you could throw out for somebody that's performing?
It's all really valuable advice. And the looking ahead thing, if you just think about how you read a book or you read anything, if you really think about it, you're always looking at the next word while you're like saying in your mind, or certainly reading out loud. If you start to think about it, it almost becomes a little weird. Like you're processing the next word while you're saying the previous word. And that's really how music works. What I would do with students, if you can find a teacher or a partner to do this with, have them cover up the bar you're on and look at, and you will be amazed how weird that is at first, but what a valuable skill that is as well. And just the more you get comfortable, I really equate it to language. As we get comfortable with written language, we're not processing every individual letter, we're looking at a word. And as we get comfortable with music, we're going to process maybe 4 notes at a time, 5 notes at a time. And the more we practice our scales and arpeggios, we'll see those patterns, and we'll think of them more like words in music rather than, I have all these different letters I have to process. So part of it is just taking time and getting comfortable, but as you learn these patterns, you're going to be more able to read ahead.
Yeah, and you see the same thing again and again. So if it's the root fifth bass line that we were talking about before, once you've seen a few of those, you start to just recognize that, and you're not there's not as much mental capacity being taken up, which means that you can then start to maybe make a bit of music, which is what we're all here for, and communicating with everyone. Well, Jason, I wanted to say thank you for visiting us, for sharing so much really carefully presented, and fantastic teaching. It's just been a real joy to learn from you, to hear how you teach sight reading, how you approach it, and I'm sure that the students at home will have got a huge amount from the course. And yeah, thanks so much for joining us, and I've really appreciated spending time with you this week. It's been great.
Likewise, it's been a pleasure. Love it.